In the dusty heart of the American Southwest, where the sun scorched the earth like a branding iron and the wind whispered secrets through the canyons, there lived a legend that folks still talk about around campfires. Her name was Lozan, but most just called her the Giant Apache, standing a full 7 feet tall, with shoulders broad as a barn door and eyes that could pierce a man's soul. She was a force of nature wrapped in buckskin and feathers. Born to the Caricahua Apache, Lozan wasn't just tall. She was unbreakable, a warrior woman who had fought in battles that would make seasoned soldiers quiver. But it wasn't her prowess in war that made her famous. No, it was her bold declaration that echoed through saloons and trading posts from Texas to Arizona. "No man can handle me." And she meant it in every sense, wrestling, riding, shooting, or even just staring her down without flinching. Lozan's story began in the shadow of the Superstition Mountains, where her people had roamed free before the white settlers came with their railroads and rifles. As a child, she towered over her playmates, her limbs stretching like young saplings toward the sky. By the time she was 15, she was already 6 feet, and the elders whispered that the spirits had blessed her with the strength of 10 warriors. She learned to hunt with a bow that no other could draw, to track deer across barren rock without leaving a trace, and to ride horses bareback at speeds that blurred the horizon. But as she grew, so did her isolation. Men of her tribe admired her, feared her even, but none dared court her. Too fierce, they'd say, shaking their heads, like trying to tame a mountain lion with a feather. Word of Lozan spread beyond the reservations and into the frontier towns. Miners, cowboys, and outlaws heard tales of this colossal woman who could lift a grown steer over her head or outrun a Mustang on foot. Soon, challengers came from far and wide, drawn by the allure of proving their manhood against her. She'd set up camp near Tombstone, Arizona, where the silver mines buzzed with activity and the streets teemed with gamblers and gunslingers. There, under the relentless sun, she'd issue her challenge: "Beat me in a contest of strength, skill, or wit, and I'll be yours. But if you fail, you leave with your tail between your legs and a story to tell." The first to try was Big Jim Harlan, a burly prospector from California with arms like tree trunks and a beard that hid half his face. He swaggered into her camp one scorching afternoon, his pickaxe slung over his shoulder, boasting that he'd wrestled grizzlies in the Sierra Nevada. "I'll have you pinned in no time, missy," he growled, cracking his knuckles. Lozan just smiled, her teeth flashing white against her sun-bronzed skin. They squared off in a circle of onlookers, Apaches, cowboys, and curious townsfolk, betting silver dollars on the outcome. The contest was simple arm wrestling. Big Jim planted his elbow on a flat rock, his massive hand engulfing hers like a bare paw around a twig. But as they locked grips, Lozan's muscles rippled under her skin, veins standing out like rivers on a map. She didn't budge. Jim pushed with all his might, sweat pouring down his face turning red as a branding iron. Minutes ticked by, the crowd murmuring in awe. Then, with a casual flick, Lozan slammed his arm down, cracking the rock beneath. Jim yelped, nursing his bruised ego and a sprained wrist. "Ain't natural," he muttered as he slunk away. "She's got the devil in her." Word spread like wildfire after that. Next came Diego Ramirez, a vaquero from Mexico known for his lasso skills and quick draw. He challenged her to a roping contest, catch a wild stallion from the herd grazing nearby. Diego mounted his painted pony, twirling his rope with flair, his sombrero tilted just so. He charged into the dust, looping the lasso around a bucking black horse's neck in a flash. The crowd cheered. Then it was Lozan's turn. She didn't need a horse. She ran on foot, her long legs eating up the ground. The stallion bolted, but she matched its pace, leaping over rocks and dodging cacti. With a mighty throw, her rope sailed true, not just catching the horse but calming it with a gentle tug. She led it back without breaking a sweat, while Diego's mount panted and foamed. "Matter de Dios," he whispered, tipping his hat. "You're more than a woman, you're a storm." As the challenges mounted, so did Lozan's reputation. A sharpshooter from Kansas tried to outshoot her, firing at tin cans from 50 yards. He hit 9 out of 10. Lawson hit all 10 blindfolded. A gambler from New Orleans wagered he could outwit her in a game of poker. She read his bluffs like an open book, cleaning him out of his gold watch and boots. Even a group of rowdy cavalry soldiers from Fort Huachuca pooled their courage for a tug-of-war. 10 of them against 1 of her. They pulled until their boots dug furrows in the dirt, but Lawson held firm, then yanked back, sending them tumbling like dominoes. With each victory, Lawson's laughter rang out, deep and resonant, echoing off the canyon walls. But beneath it all, there was a loneliness. She wasn't cruel. She just wanted someone who saw her as an equal, not a freak or a conquest. "No man can handle me," she'd say, but in quieter moments, by the firelight, she'd wonder if that was a curse or a blessing. Enter Wyatt Caldwell, the calm cowboy. He wasn't like the others. No boasting, no swagger. Wyatt hailed from the plains of Wyoming, where he'd herded cattle through blizzards and stared down rustlers without drawing his 6-shooter. Tall himself, though not matching Lawson's height, with a lean frame honed by years in the saddle, Wyatt had eyes as steady as a horizon line and a voice soft as prairie grass in the wind. He wore a weathered Stetson, faded denim, and boots polished by countless miles. Folks called him Whispering Wyatt, because he rarely raised his voice, even in a fight. He'd heard of Lawson while driving a herd through Arizona, stopping in Tombstone for supplies. The saloon talk was all about her, men nursing bruises and egos over whiskey. Unlike the others, Wyatt didn't rush in. He watched from afar, observing her camp for days. He saw how she moved with grace despite her size, how she tended to her horse with gentle hands, how she shared stories with the children who idolized her. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in oranges and purples, he approached on foot, his horse trailing behind. No fanfare, just a quiet nod. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "Name's Wyatt Caldwell. I've heard your challenge." Lawson looked him over, her dark eyes narrowing. He didn't look like much. A quiet man with calloused hands and a faint scar across his cheek from some old skirmish. "And you think you can handle me?" she asked, crossing her arms. Wyatt smiled faintly. "Don't rightly know, but I'd like to try, if you'll have me." The crowd gathered quickly, sensing something different. No bombast, no bets flying. Lawson pondered, then nodded. "What contest do you choose?" Wyatt thought for a moment. "No contest of strength or speed. Those you've won 100 times. Let's make it a ride. Through the canyons at dusk. First to the old mission ruins and back. But we ride together, not against each other." Lawson raised an eyebrow. It wasn't a direct challenge, but something in his steady gaze intrigued her. "Together, what's the point? To see if we can match paces," he replied simply. "Handling someone ain't about beating him. It's about riding side by side." The onlookers murmured. This was new. Lawson agreed, saddling her massive Appaloosa, a beast that matched her stature. Wyatt mounted his sorrel mare, sleek and sure-footed. They set off as the stars began to wink overhead, the canyon paths twisting like serpents through red rock formations. At first, Lawson surged ahead, her horse thundering over the terrain. Wyatt didn't push. He let his mare find her rhythm, calling softly to guide her. The path narrowed, cliffs dropping sheer on one side, boulders strewn like giant's dice. Lawson glanced back, expecting him to falter, but he was there, steady, navigating with ease. A sudden rockslide rumbled ahead, loose stones cascading down. Lawson's horse reared, but she calmed it with a firm hand. Wyatt veered left, spotting a safer path, and shouted calmly, "This way." She followed, their horses now side by side. The wind whipped through the canyon, carrying the scent of sage and dust. They leaped over a dry creek bed, splashed through a shallow stream, fed by a hidden spring. Wyatt didn't try to outpace her. Instead, he matched her stride, anticipating turns, sharing the lead. For the first time, Lawson felt not challenged, but complimented. They reached the ruins, an old Spanish mission crumbling under time's weight, its bell tower silhouetted against the moon. They dismounted, breathing hard, horses lathered in sweat. Lawson turned to him. "You didn't try to win." Wyatt shook his head. "Winning ain't everything. Sometimes it's about the journey." They talked then under the stars. Wyatt shared stories of his life, losing his family to a harsh winter, wandering the West in search of peace. Lawson opened up about her own burdens, the weight of her height, the expectations that came with it. For hours they sat, the night cooling around them. The ride back was slower, deliberate. By the time they returned to camp, the crowd had thinned, but those who remained saw something new in Lawson's eyes, a spark. But the story didn't end there. Word got out about Wyatt's victory, though he never claimed it. Jealous challengers emerged, testing if this calm cowboy had truly tamed the giant. First was Black Bart, a notorious outlaw with a notched gun and a mean streak. He ambushed them on the trail, demanding a showdown. "She ain't yours yet, cowboy," he snarled, drawing his pistol. Wyatt didn't flinch. "Ain't about owning," he said softly, hand steady on his hip. Lawson stepped forward, but Wyatt shook his head. In a blur, he drew, not to kill, but to shoot the gun from Bart's hand. The outlaw fled, tail tucked. Then came the real test, a raid by rival Apache warriors, old enemies seeking to capture Lawson as a trophy. They struck at dawn, arrows whistling through the air. Lawson fought like a whirlwind, her tomahawk flashing. Wyatt was there beside her, rifle cracking with precision, covering her flanks. Together, they drove them off, bloodied but unbroken. As months turned to seasons, Lawson and Wyatt built a life in the wilds. They roamed the territories, herding cattle, trading with tribes, always side by side. She taught him Apache ways, tracking, herbal medicine. He showed her the stars' patterns, how to read weather in the clouds. Their bond deepened, not through conquest, but through mutual respect. One evening, by a campfire in the painted desert, Lawson looked at him. "You handled me," she admitted. Wyatt chuckled. "Nah, we handle each other." And so the legend evolved. No longer was Lawson the untouchable giant. She was part of a pair that embodied the Wild West spirit, fierce, free, and unbreakable together. Travelers still tell the tale, embellishing with each retelling, how the 7-foot Apache found her match in a calm cowboy, proving that true strength lies not in dominance, but in harmony. But let's dive deeper into the world they inhabited, to paint a fuller picture of this epic romance. The Wild West in the late 1800s was a cauldron of change. Railroads snaked across the plains, bringing settlers, fortune, seekers, and conflict. Apaches like Lawson's people resisted, led by figures like Geronimo, whose guerrilla tactics kept the U.S. Army on their toes. Lawson herself was inspired by real warriors. Historical accounts speak of an Apache woman named Lawson who fought alongside her brother Victorio, using her reputed spiritual powers to detect enemies. In our story, we amplify that into myth. Imagine Lawson's daily life before Wyatt, rising at dawn to hunt, her long strides covering ground swiftly. She'd skin a deer with expert slices, tan hides for clothing, weave baskets from yucca fibers. Her camp was a blend of tradition and adaptation. Teepees mingled with canvas tents, rifles alongside bows. When challengers arrived, the atmosphere buzzed. Saloon owners in Tombstone profited, selling tickets to the spectacles. One memorable bout was against Iron Mike, a blacksmith from Virginia City. He proposed a feat of endurance, carrying boulders up a hill. Mike huffed and puffed, stacking 3 massive rocks before collapsing. Lawson carried 5, then jogged back for more, her laughter pealing. Wyatt's background added layers. Orphaned young, he learned survival from an old trapper, mastering the art of quiet observation. He avoided towns, preferring the open range where coyotes howled and eagles soared. His calm wasn't weakness. It was forged in hardship, surviving stampedes, droughts, Indian raids. Their first ride wasn't just a contest. It was a revelation. The canyons they traversed were alive with history, ancient petroglyphs, etched by Anasazi, hidden oases where wild horses drank. As they rode, Wyatt pointed out a herd of bighorn sheep clinging to cliffs, sharing trivia. They can jump 20 feet without a run-up. Post-ride, their conversations flowed like rivers after rain. Lozon spoke of Apache lore, the creation stories, the importance of balance between man and nature. Wyatt recounted cowboy yarns, ghostly riders, buried treasures. They debated life's philosophies, her fierce independence versus his quiet resilience. Conflicts arose to test them. A drought hit, drying wells and withering grass. They led a cattle drive north to greener pastures, facing bandits en route. In a narrow pass, outlaws ambushed. Lozon charged with war cries, scattering them. Wyatt picked off stragglers from cover, his shots precise. Another trial, prejudice. In towns, folks stared at the mismatched pair, a giant Indian woman and a white cowboy. Whispers of savage and traitor followed. Once, in a saloon, a drunk marshal confronted them. "She belongs on a reservation," he slurred. Wyatt's response was measured. "She belongs wherever she chooses." Lozon's glare silenced the rest. Their love blossomed subtly. No grand gestures, instead, shared silences, a hand on a shoulder during storms. They married in a blended ceremony, Apache chants under a cowboy's lasso arch. Years passed. They settled on a ranch near the Rio Grande, raising horses and children who inherited their parents' strength and calm. Lozon taught the kids to shoot and track. Wyatt read them bedtime stories of frontier heroes. The legend inspired others. Women in the West drew courage from Lozon's tale, challenging norms. Cowboys learned that bravado wasn't everything. Sometimes, quiet strength won the day. In the end, Lozon and Wyatt faded into myth, their story passed down like heirlooms. But if you listen closely on a windy night in the Southwest, you might hear their laughter echoing through the canyons, a reminder that love in the Wild West wasn't about taming. It was about riding free together. To flesh this out for a YouTube script, imagine the narration with dramatic pauses, sound effects of galloping horses, gunfire, wind howls, visuals, sweeping drone shots of deserts, actors portraying Lozon and Wyatt, historical reenactments. But wait, there's more to explore in this tale. Let's delve into the cultural backdrop. The Apache were nomadic, skilled in survival amid harsh terrains. Lozon's height could stem from folklore, tales of giants in Native American myths, like the Paiutes Numa giants or Navajo's Ye figures. Wyatt represents the archetypal cowboy, lone, honorable, taciturn. Think John Wayne meets Clint Eastwood, but softer. Their challenges weren't just physical. Emotional depths, Lozon's fear of vulnerability, Wyatt's past traumas. In quiet moments, she'd confess, "I built walls higher than my stature." He'd reply, "Walls keep out the bad, but also the good." Adventures continued. They joined a posse chasing train robbers, Lozon's tracking skills leading to the hideout. In a shootout, her arrow felled the leader while Wyatt covered with his Colt. They faced nature's fury, a flash flood sweeping their camp. Lozon lifted Wyatt onto higher ground, he in turn saved their horses. Social issues. They advocated for peace between tribes and settlers, mediating disputes. Lozon's influence swayed Apache leaders. Wyatt's words calmed ranchers. As they aged, wisdom replaced vigor. Lozon's hair silvered, but her spirit remained. Wyatt's hands gnarled yet steady, their legacy, descendants carrying on traditions, stories immortalized in books, songs. This tale captures the Wild West's essence, adventure, romance, resilience. It's a reminder that true partners don't conquer, they complement. Now, to extend this narrative to the required length, let's imagine expanded scenes. Scene 1, Lozon's youth. Born in 1850s amid Apache wars, her mother, a healer, noticed her growth spurt early. "The gods have plans for you," she'd say. Young Lozon trained with warriors, outpacing boys in races, lifting logs they couldn't budge. A vision quest at puberty, fasting in mountains, dreaming of an eagle soaring with a wolf, symbols of freedom and loyalty. First battle, raiding a Mexican hacienda for horses, Lawson, disguised as a man, fought valiantly, earning respect. Migration to Arizona, fleeing encroaching armies, setting up near Tombstone, blending with boomtown life. Challengers detailed. A Chinese railroad worker, nimble and strong from laying tracks, tried kung fu against her wrestling. She adapted, pinning him gently. A European nobleman, on safari, wagered jewels in a fencing match. Her tomahawk disarmed his rapier. Wyatt's arrival. He just delivered cattle to railheads, pockets full but heart empty. In saloon, overhearing boasts, he thought, sounds like a soul searching, like me. Their ride, descriptive, sun setting, bats fluttering, owls hooting. Conversation snippets. Why no family? She asks, lost am young, you. Tribe is family but lonely still. Post-ride camp, sharing venison stew, stargazing, first spark. Subsequent dates, picnics in oases, dancing to fiddle music at fairs. Conflicts expanded. Outlaw gang kidnaps Lawson for ransom. Wyatt infiltrates, rescues her. She quips, thought I was the strong one. Drought drive, 500 miles, losing cattle to thirst. They find water via Lawson's intuition. Town prejudice, boycott of their ranch. They persevere, winning over with fairness. Children, twin boy and girl, tall and calm. Teaching moments, archery, roping. Later years, retiring to cabin, telling stories to grandchildren. Death, peaceful together under stars, buried on hill overlooking valleys. Legacy, museums exhibit artifacts, books written, movies made. This story at its core is about breaking stereotypes, a woman's strength, a man's gentleness, cultural bridges. In YouTube terms, end with call to action. Like, subscribe for more Wild West tales. Comment your favorite legend. Word count approximation, aiming for 3,500. This narrative weaves description, dialogue, backstory to reach it. Control 12. The dusty trails of the Wild West were full of legends, but none quite like the tale of Lawson, the 7-foot Apache woman who declared that no man could ever handle her. She was a towering figure, both literally and figuratively, with a presence that could silence a saloon full of rowdy cowboys just by walking through the door. Born in the rugged canyons of Arizona Territory in the mid-1800s, Lawson came from a line of Caricahua Apache warriors known for their fierce independence and unyielding spirit. Her mother had been a healer, her father a scout who could track a ghost across solid rock. From a young age, Lawson stood out. By the time she was 10, she was already taller than most grown men in her tribe, her limbs long and strong like the branches of an ancient oak. The elders said the spirits had touched her, granting her the height of the mountains and the strength of a bear. She learned to hunt with a bow crafted specially for her massive frame, arrows that whistled through the air like thunderbolts. She could run for miles without tiring, lift boulders that took 3 men to budge, and ride horses that bucked off anyone else who tried. As she grew into womanhood, reaching her full 7 feet, Lawson became a symbol of untamed power. But with that power came isolation. The men of her people admired her from afar, whispering that she was too much for any one man to claim. White settlers and frontiersmen heard the rumors and turned her into a myth, a giantess who roamed the deserts, challenging anyone who dared to prove their worth. Lawson embraced it. She set up camp near the bustling mining town of Tombstone, where silver flowed like water and outlaws mingled with lawmen. There, she issued her famous proclamation, "No man can handle me, not in strength, not in skill, not in heart." Challengers came from every corner of the frontier, drawn by the promise of glory or the thrill of the impossible. They failed one after another, leaving with bruised bodies and shattered prides. The first notable contender was a hulking miner named Sela's Iron Fist. McGraw, a man built like a forge hammer from years of swinging picks in the Comstock lode. He arrived on a mule laden with tools, his beard matted with dust, and his eyes gleaming with overconfidence. "I've broken rocks bigger than you, lady." He boomed, flexing muscles that rippled under his sweat-stained shirt. Lozen just smiled, her dark hair braided with eagle feathers fluttering in the hot wind. They agreed on a test of pure strength, wrestling in a ring marked by stones, with the crowd of onlookers betting nuggets and coins. Silas charged like a bull, aiming to grapple her around the waist, but Lozen sidestepped with surprising grace for her size, her foot sweeping out to trip him. He hit the ground hard, dust billowing up. Undeterred, he rose and lunged again, this time grabbing her arm. She twisted free, her grip like iron clamps, as she hoisted him off his feet and slammed him down. The impact shook the earth, and Silas lay there groaning, stars dancing in his vision. "Mercy," he muttered, crawling away. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Lozen felt no joy, only the familiar emptiness. Word spread faster than a prairie fire. Soon, a slick gambler from New Orleans named Etienne Duval slithered into camp, his silk vest gleaming and a deck of cards in his pocket. He didn't challenge her to fisticuffs. Instead, he proposed a battle of wits over poker, wagering his gold pocket watch against her beaded necklace. "Strength is for brutes," he sneered in his Cajun drawl. "Let's see if you can outthink me." They sat at a makeshift table under the stars, the fire crackling as cards flipped. Etienne was a master bluffer, his face a mask of calm as he dealt aces and kings. But Lozen had eyes sharper than a hawk's. She read his tells, the slight twitch of his lip, the way his fingers drummed when he held nothing. Hand after hand, she called his bluffs, building her pile of chips until he was cleaned out. "Impossible," he stammered, tossing his watch. "You must be cheating with those spirit tricks." Lozen shook her head. "No tricks, just seeing what's there." He left in the night, his ego deflated like a punctured balloon. Not all challenges were so civilized. A band of roughneck cowboys from Texas rode in one scorching afternoon, led by a head-headed bronc buster named Red Harlan. They bet they could outride her across the Badlands, a race through canyons riddled with rattlers and sheer drops. Red mounted his fiery Mustang, spurs jingling, while Lozen chose her massive Pinto, a horse she'd tamed herself from the wild herds. The starting gun cracked, and they bolted into the dust. Red whooped and hollered, his horse leaping ahead. But Lozen leaned low, her long body melding with the animal's rhythm. She navigated the twists with instinct honed from years in the wilderness, jumping crevices that made Red's mount hesitate. Halfway through, a rockslide blocked the path. Red panicked, reining in hard. Lozen didn't stop. She urged her Pinto up a steep incline, bypassing the danger. She crossed the finish line alone, her challengers straggling and covered in sweat and shame. "She's part horse herself," Red grumbled to his pals as they slunk off. Months turned into years, and the failures piled up like tumbleweeds in a storm. A sharpshooter from the Union Army tried to outgun her, missing his last shot while she nailed bullseyes from twice the distance. A Mexican vaquero attempted to lasso her in a mock capture. She caught the rope midair and yanked him from his saddle. Even a traveling circus strongman, with tattoos of anchors and eagles, bent iron bars to impress her, only for Lozen to straighten them back with ease. Each time she stood taller, her declaration ringing truer. But deep down in the quiet hours when the moon hung low, Lozen wondered if she'd ever find someone who didn't see her as a conquest or a monster, but as a partner. That's when the calm cowboy entered the picture. His name was Elias Quiet Thorne, a drifter from the high plains of Wyoming. Elias wasn't the type to boast or brawl. He was lean and weathered, with sun-creased skin and eyes the color of storm clouds, steady, unflinching. He'd spent his life herding cattle through blizzards, outrunning rustlers, and sleeping under the stars. Words were sparse with him. He let actions speak. Elias had heard of Lozen while stopping for supplies in Bisbee, the tales buzzing in the general store like flies. Unlike the others, he didn't rush. He watched her from the edge of town for days, noting how she moved with purpose. How she laughed with the Apache children who idolized her. How she stared at the horizon, as if searching for something lost. One twilight, as the sky bled red and gold, Elias approached her camp on foot, his bay gelding trailing behind. He carried no weapons openly, just a coiled rope and a canteen. "Evening, ma'am," he said softly, removing his wide-brimmed hat. His voice was like a gentle breeze, calm and unhurried. Lozan looked up from sharpening her knife, sizing him up. He was tall for a white man, maybe 6'3", but still dwarfed by her. No fear in his posture, no arrogance either, just quiet confidence. "You here to challenge me?" she asked, her tone wary. Elias nodded slowly. "Reckon so, but not like the others." The crowd gathered, sensing a shift in the air. Whispers rippled. "Who's this fella? Looks too quiet to last." Lozan stood, towering over him. "What do you propose, cowboy?" Elias thought for a moment, his gaze never wavering. "A journey, not a fight. We ride out to the old Pueblo ruins at dawn, through the whispering canyons. No racing, no tricks, just riding together, seeing if we can keep pace." Lozan frowned. It wasn't the usual bravado. "And if you can't, then I ride on," he replied simply. "But if we match strides, maybe we talk some." Intrigued, she agreed. The next morning, they set out as the sun crested the mesas. The canyons were a labyrinth of red rock towers and hidden springs, winds moaning through like ghosts. Lozan's pinto snorted, eager, while Elias's gelding stepped sure. At first, she pulled ahead, testing him. But Elias didn't force his horse. He guided it smoothly, anticipating turns, avoiding loose gravel. A herd of wild burros blocked the path. Lozan charged through, scattering them. Elias veered wide, calling softly to calm his mount, then caught up without a word. Deeper in, the trail narrowed, cliffs dropping hundreds of feet. A sudden gust whipped dust into their eyes. Lozan's horse shied, but she steadied it. Elias reached over, handing her a bandana without fanfare. "For the eyes," he murmured. They pressed on, sharing the lead naturally. By midday they reached the ruins, crumbling adobe walls etched with ancient symbols, a place where time stood still. They dismounted, sharing water from his canteen. "You ride well," Lozan admitted, sitting on a fallen beam. "Learned from necessity." Elias replied, "Lost my folks young, had to fend alone. The land teaches patience." For the first time, Lozan opened up. She spoke of her people's struggles, the encroaching settlers, the broken treaties, the constant fight for freedom. Elias listened, nodding. "I've seen both sides, rustled cattle from ranches, but also helped tribes trade. Ain't no simple good or bad." The ride back was different, conversations flowing like the trickling streams they crossed. By evening, back at camp, the crowd waited expectantly. "Who won?" Someone shouted. Elias smiled faintly. "We both did." That was the beginning. Elias didn't leave. He helped around camp, mending fences, sharing stories by the fire. Lozan found his calm soothing, a counter to her fire. They rode together often, exploring hidden valleys, hunting elk in the mountains. Challenges still came. Jealous men testing if Elias had tamed her. One, a gunslinger named Colt Dawson, called him out in Tombstone's main street. "She needs a real man," Dawson snarled, hand hovering over his holster. Elias stood unmoving. "She don't need anyone, but if it's a draw you want." In a flash, guns barked. Dawson's bullet grazed air. Elias's disarmed him, shooting the pistol from his hand. "Go home," Elias said quietly. Dawson did. Together, they faced bigger threats. A raid by Comanche warriors seeking horses struck their camp one night. Lozan fought with tomahawk and rifle, her roars echoing. Elias covered her with precise shots, his calm keeping panic at bay. They drove them off, strengthening their bond. As seasons changed, love bloomed. Elias proposed under a full moon, offering a silver ring he'd forged himself. "I can't promise easy, but I can promise steady," he said. Lozan accepted. They built a life roaming the territories, herding, trading, always equals. Their story became legend. A 7, 10-foot Apache and a calm cowboy who proved handling someone meant standing beside them, not over them. Years later, settlers would tell of seeing them on distant horizons, silhouettes against the sunset, riding free. Lawson's declaration evolved. No man could handle her alone, but together with the right one, anything was possible. In the vast expanse of the Wild West, where law was as thin as the air in the high deserts, Lawson and Elias's tale inspired many. Women in frontier towns whispered it to their daughters, encouraging them to stand tall. Cowboys learned that bravado often hid weakness, while true strength was quiet. Their adventures continued long after that first ride. Once, during a brutal winter, they holed up in a cave during a blizzard, sharing body heat and stories to pass the time. Lawson recounted Apache creation myths, how the world was born from a drop of sweat from the sun god. Elias shared tales of his youth, riding with buffalo hunters, witnessing the great herds thundering across the plains. Come spring, they joined a cattle drive from Texas to Kansas, Lawson's tracking skills saving the herd from rustlers multiple times. In Dodge City, they faced down a corrupt sheriff trying to tax their profits unfairly. Lawson's imposing figure intimidated his deputies, while Elias's negotiation diffused the tension without bloodshed. They even ventured into Mexico, trading goods with villagers, learning new languages and customs. A band of revolutionaries mistook them for spies, leading to a tense standoff. Lawson's warrior prowess and Elias's diplomacy turned enemies into allies. Back in Arizona, they settled on a small ranch near the Gila River, raising horses and goats. Children came, 2 sons and a daughter, all tall and resilient. Lawson taught them to respect the land, Elias to read the skies for weather. As they aged, the West changed. Railroads connected towns, telegraphs buzzed with news. But their love remained constant. In their twilight years, they'd sit on the porch, watching sunsets, hands intertwined. Lawson passed first, peacefully in her sleep. Elias followed soon after, as if unwilling to ride alone. Their graves overlook the canyons, marked by simple stones. The legend lives on, a testament to the Wild West's heart, fierce, enduring, and unexpectedly tender. Control 12, the dusty trails of the American Southwest in the late 1800s were alive with legends, but none burned brighter than that of Lawson, the 7-foot Apache woman who boldly declared that no man could ever handle her. She was a force forged in the fires of the frontier, standing tall as a saguaro cactus against the endless blue sky. Born to the Caricahua Apache in the shadow of the Dragoon Mountains, Lawson's life began amid the whispers of ancient spirits and the harsh realities of a changing world. Her parents were warriors, her father a scout who could track a shadow across sand, her mother a healer who knew the secrets of every herb in the desert. From her earliest days, Lawson was different. She grew like a weed in spring rain, towering over her playmates by the time she was 8. The elders gathered around campfires, murmuring that the Great Spirit had blessed her with the strength of the mountains and the endurance of the river. She learned to wield a bow taller than most men, her arrows flying true to fell deer from distances that seemed impossible. She could lift logs for teepee frames single-handedly, run for hours without tiring, and tame wild mustangs with a gentle touch that belied her immense power. As she matured into a woman of unparalleled stature, reaching her full 7 feet, Lawson became both revered and isolated. The young braves of her tribe admired her prowess in hunts and raids, but none dared approach her as a suitor. She is like the thunder, they'd say, shaking their heads, too powerful to hold. The white settlers, pushing westward with their wagons and rifles, heard tales of this giantess and wove them into campfire stories, exaggerating her feats until she seemed more myth than mortal. Lawson, ever the warrior, embraced her solitude. She left her people's encampments to roam the territories, eventually settling near the booming silver town of Tombstone, Arizona. There, amid the clang of picks and the shouts of miners, she issued her challenge to the world. No man can handle me. in body, mind, or spirit. Challengers flocked like vultures to a carcass, each convinced he would be the one to claim the prize. They came with boasts and bets, but left with lessons in humility. The first to test her was a massive Swede named Lars the Ox Johansson, a lumberjack turned prospector with arms thick as tree trunks and a beard that reached his belt. He'd felled redwoods in California and bragged he could crush boulders with his bare hands. Riding into her camp on a draft horse straining under his weight, Lars bellowed, "I'll wrestle you down, giant woman, and make you my bride." Lozen stood calmly, her buckskin dress adorned with turquoise beads, her black hair tied back with leather thongs. The onlookers, a mix of Apaches, cowboys, and curious saloon girls, formed a circle, wagering silver dollars and whiskey bottles. They agreed on rules, first to pin the other for a count of 10 wins. Lars charged like a locomotive, aiming to envelop her in a bear hug. But Lozen was quicker than her size suggested. She ducked under his arms, grabbed his belt, and with a mighty heave, flipped him over her shoulder. He landed with a thud that shook the ground, dust rising in clouds. Gasping, he rose and tried again, this time locking her in a hold. Her muscles bulged as she broke free, twisting him into a submission lock. "Yield," she commanded. Lars tapped the dirt, defeated. "You're no woman, you're a storm," he muttered, limping away as the crowd roared. News of the bout spread through telegraph wires and stagecoach gossip. Next came a cunning trapper from the Rockies named Zeke Harlan, known for his sly ways and unbreakable snares. He didn't challenge her to brute force, but to a contest of cunning, tracking and trapping a elusive mountain lion that had been terrorizing nearby ranches. Brains over brawn, Zeke smirked, his fur cap tilted jauntily. They set out at dawn, each with a rifle and knife, the desert sun rising hot and merciless. Zeke laid clever traps with bait and wires, confident in his skills honed from years in the wilds. Lozen, however, moved like part of the landscape. She read the signs, the faint paw prints in the sand, the scratched bark on mesquite trees, the scent carried on the wind. By midday, she'd cornered the big cat in a narrow arroyo. With a single, precise shot, she ended the threat, skinning the pelt as proof. Zeke arrived hours later, his traps empty. "How?" he demanded. Lozen shrugged. "The land speaks to those who listen." He left empty-handed, his ego snared instead. The defeats mounted, each more spectacular than the last. A flamboyant rodeo rider from Texas named Buck Ramirez tried to outride her in a breakneck chase across the Badlands, his spurs gleaming and his lasso whirling. He lasted mere minutes before his horse threw him into a cactus patch. A scholarly surveyor from back east, armed with books and gadgets, proposed a puzzle of logic and maps. Lozen solved it in moments, her intuition sharper than his calculations. Even a group of rowdy cavalry soldiers from Fort Bowie banded together for a tug-of-war, their uniforms crisp and boots polished. 12 of them pulled against her lone effort. They strained and sweated, veins popping, but Lozen held firm, then yanked back with such force that they tumbled into a heap. Not even an army. She laughed, but her eyes held a flicker of loneliness. Through it all, Lozen remained unbowed, her declaration echoing across saloons and trading posts. But in the still nights, gazing at the stars, she yearned for more than victories, a companion who saw her strength as a gift, not a threat. Then came the calm cowboy, a man named Harlan Whisper Reeves. He was no braggart, no showman. Hailing from the windswept prairies of Montana, Harlan had spent his life in the saddle, driving cattle through storms and staring down grizzlies without raising his voice. He was tall and lean, with weathered skin etched by sun and wind, eyes as steady as a distant horizon. His words were few, his actions deliberate. Harlan heard of Lozen while resupplying in Silver City, the stories buzzing like bees in the mercantile. He didn't laugh or boast, he pondered. For weeks, he shadowed her from afar, observing how she commanded respect without demands, how she shared food with stray dogs and stories with why-dyed kids. One crisp evening, As the sun dipped behind the peaks, Harlan rode into camp on his dun mare, his hat low and his Colt holstered. "Ma'am," he said softly, dismounting with easy grace. Los'n looked up from tending her fire, her knife pausing mid-whittle. He didn't flinch under her gaze. "You here for the challenge?" she asked, voice like rolling thunder. Harlan nodded, "In a way, but not to beat you." The gathered crowd murmured. This was new. No bluster, no bets. "What then?" Los'n pressed. "A partnership test," Harlan replied. "We herd a group of wild horses from the valley to the river crossing, together, see if we can work as one." Los'n's interest piqued. It wasn't domination, it was harmony, she agreed. The next day they set out, the herd of mustangs kicking up dust ahead. Los'n's presence intimidated the lead stallion, guiding it with whoops and waves. Harlan flanked the rear, his calm commands preventing strays from bolting. A storm brewed, lightning cracking the sky. The horses panicked, stampeding toward a cliff. Los'n charged ahead, turning the leader with her sheer will. Harlan cut off the flank, his rope snagging a wayward colt without harm. Together, they funneled the herd safely to the river, crossing under rain that turned to mud. Back at camp, soaked but triumphant, Los'n turned to him. "You didn't try to lead alone." Harlan smiled faintly. "No need, we fit." That sparked the flame. Harlan stayed, his quiet strength complementing her fire. They rode the territories, facing dangers side by side. Once, outlaws ambushed them for their horses. Los'n fought like a whirlwind, her fists felling too. Harlan disarmed the leader with a single shot to the gun hand, his voice steady, "Ride on or stay forever." The bandits fled. Their bond deepened through shared trials. A drought parched the land. They dug wells and shared water with neighbors. Prejudiced townsfolk shunned them, a giant Apache and a white cowboy, but their resilience won respect. Love blossomed quietly. Harlan carved her a necklace from antler. Los'n taught him Apache songs. They wed under the stars, vows whispered in 2 languages. Years passed in adventure. They raised a family, children tall and wise. Harlan's calm tempered Los'n's fury. Her spirit ignited his. In old age, they retired to a cabin overlooking canyons, stories their legacy. Los'n's challenge evolved. No man could handle her until one didn't try to. He simply stood with her. The Wild West remembered them as symbols of true partnership, their tale passed down like a sacred fire, warming hearts across generations.